Before we part company tonight, a few thoughts. We look to Supreme Court justices for their legal opinions, and the late Justice Antonin Scalia wrote with elegance, eloquence, and insight. But Justice Scalia did not limit his wisdom to written opinions. His last public speech came last June as he delivered the commencement address at the Stone Ridge School of the Sacred Heart in Bethesda, Maryland. His own granddaughter was graduating, so Justice Scalia dispensed some grandfatherly advice.
In short, it is your responsibility, women of the class of 2015, not just to be zealous in the pursuit of your ideals, but to be sure that your ideals are the right ones, not merely in their ends, but in their means. That is perhaps the hardest part of being a good human being. Good intentions are not enough. Being a good person begins with being a wise person. It is a belief today that seems particularly to beset modern society, that believing deeply in something, following that belief, is the most important thing a person can do. Get out there and picket, or boycott, or electioneer, or whatever. Show yourself to be a, quote, committed person. That is the fashionable phrase. I am here to tell you that it is much less important how committed you are than what you are committed to.
In short, there is nothing right about devoting your passions to the wrong pursuits. So pursue right-minded goals in the right way. Good practical advice from one of the great legal minds on the right. We'll miss him, and that's the way I see it. Now it's time for the way you see it. Your comments via social media. First, we hear from Claude, who writes in about President Obama and the vacancy on the court after the untimely passing of Justice Scalia. He writes, should Obama try to pick the next Supreme Court judge? Well, what difference does it make? We all know he will. Now let's see if the Senate has any staying power. So sad that voters have taken off their thinking caps. But voters need to keep their eyes open and keep their eyes on the Republican Senate to see if they'll move toward accommodation or actually providing the advice in the advise and consent clause of the Constitution. Next, we hear from Elaine, who watched Newsmax Prime last night, and she comments about the new Marco Rubio ad, which uses the theme of Morning in America, yet uses an opening clip of a scene from Vancouver candidate. She writes, Rubio's ad was okay. What problem has he had about borders? Elaine, let me put this to you very diplomatically. Though he's talked tough about the border, you may recall Senator Rubio was part of the Gang of Eight. He advocated, worked for, and voted for amnesty. And though now he tries to glibly suggest what he suggested was not amnesty, voters know better. That's going to cause a problem. So taking a scene from north of the border in his ad about Morning in America, well, that ironically reinforces the problem he's already had. Now, let's hear from Chris. He writes in about this weekend's Republican primary in South Carolina, writing, none of the experts on TV or even talk radio, including Rush Limbaugh, have mentioned that there is no Democrat primary in South Carolina this Saturday. There's only a Republican primary. Not only that, it is an open primary, meaning that the primary voters do not have to register under either party. Therefore, the winner in South Carolina may not be the most conservative nor the most evangelical. It's a good point, Chris, but actually, we talked about that right here on Newsmax Prime last night. Let's listen again to conservative talk show host Tara Servatius with her take on the notion of South Carolina's open primary.
The independents and the Democrats vote in our open primary, and our state party leaders have trained them to vote in the primary because they like to get liberal Republicans elected. That's why we keep sending Lindsey Graham back to the Senate, to the bafflement of the entire country.
Point well noted, and we appreciate the word from our viewer. And Tara, bringing it home for us from South Carolina. We'll see what happens in the South Carolina primary Saturday night. Now, what do you think? I'd love for you to send me your comments. Do so by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. My final comment, stay brave, stay free, stay tuned.